going to introduce you to Sasha and Serena Nanua. They are twin sisters who love stories about friendship, ghosts, and all things magical. Born in Diwali, 10 minutes apart, they began writing books together at the age of 9. I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
They are graduates of the English professional writing programs at the University of Toronto and are the authors of Spirit Service, Sisters of the Snake, and Daughters of the Dawn. And I believe today you are going to be talking about Spirit Service. So I don't know, do you have a way, you're both going to read a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so this is our new book, Spirit Service.
Love it.
So we started writing this book about 3 years ago, and we pitch it as for fans of Ghostbusters meets the Babysitters Club. And we did that because I really loved the Babysitters Club growing up, and Serena actually came up with the idea for the story. Yeah, so I remember Sasha, one day she was telling me about this idea. She wanted to write a book sort of in the vein of the Babysitters Club, but she wanted it to have like a magical element to it because most of our books have magic in them. And then that night I couldn't really fall asleep, so I just opened up my notes app and I started typing Spirit Service. And then 3 years later, here we are with our first middle grade novel, and we'll read you just a short excerpt from the end of chapter 1. So we're basically reading about the 4 main characters. They're on the front cover of the book, and we're starting at the part where they find this magical telephone. The phone's buttons shone like pearls, drawing me in, and I wasn't the only one stepping closer. The other girls were too, each of us craning our necks as if the object were hypnotizing us. Together, each of us reached out a hand, the phone practically begging us to touch it. Zap! Ouch! I pulled back my hand. What was that? I stared at my tingling fingers, then at Blair, Lillian, and Aiko. Each of them was gazing down at her own hands in fright. Blair looked the most terrified of all, watching as tiny white sparks flushed down her skin and disappeared. You all felt that, right? I asked, just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Phone, Blair began timidly. It nearly zapped our fingers off? Aiko finished. Lillian's brown skin flushed pale. What was that? We all stared back down at the phone. Lillian reached into the box with an inquisitive hand, but I held her back with an arm. Lillian, you could get zapped again. I have to test my hypothesis, she argued. For Lillian, science was always at the root of everything. Instead of enjoying the magic of a beautiful sunset, she preferred to explain the way light scattered in the atmosphere to form different colors. By getting electrocuted, said Blair. Lillian ignored us as she blew out a breath and grabbed the phone. I squeezed one eye shut, preparing for another electrical charge as she set the phone on the front counter. Nothing happened. That was some static shock, huh? I joked, because what else could it have been? Blair wiped her brow with relief. Aiko slumped with disappointment. That was when things got weird. Lights flickered overhead. The ground momentarily rumbled beneath the soles of my sneakers, making my knees quiver. Even the paperwork on Mr. Yu's counter fluttered from an unseen breeze. Blair shrank back. What's going on? Lillian stared up at the lights. Maybe a power surge? Or an issue with the air vents? Just as she finished speaking, a light bulb exploded nearby. We all yelped in unison. Every light source fizzled out, one by one, plunging the store into darkness. No, a dewy silver light was now streaming out of the phone like mist escaping Niagara Falls, filling the air with an otherworldly glow. The aura from the phone was unlike anything I'd ever seen. White light escaped every hole and button, like smoke escaping a chimney, and at that exact moment, the phone rang. So that's the end of chapter 1, and the girls realize that when the phone rings, they can speak to spirits and then help the spirits move on to the afterlife.
Beautiful. Love it. Yay. Yay.
So I'm really fascinated by the fact that you're sisters and that you've been writing together since you were 9. So a couple of questions. I remember reading about Dave Pilkey, the fellow who created Captain Underpants. And he apparently created that comic strip when he was in grade 2. So it's based on a real life experience. There really was a horrible principal and all. And so like he held on to that story and and look at the results. So I'm just curious, the stories that you were writing when you were 9, have any of them become stories that have ended up in your books?
I feel like what we always say is that if you have an idea and it doesn't necessarily make it into one book, you can always save it for another.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
our published books right now are not necessarily, the books we were writing when we were 9, but I would say that everything we've written has influenced us up until this point.
And so I'm also curious about the relationship. So how does it work? Is it just very free flowing and oh, this is cool, oh, I like that, and then sort of back and forth, or is it just very rigid and structured?
Yeah, we actually tend to outline our book. So first we'll sort of talk about the book together, and then we'll do like a chapter outline, and then we'll figure out each of us which scenes we want to write, and based on that, we start to write the novel.
And you always get along when you're working together? I say this because I had a very close relationship with my sister when we were young, and we were both very creative, and for some, we never fought, and we did a lot of creative work together, and we always got along. Is that true as well?
I think because we're twins, we have a bit more of a similar
That's true.
writing
A
style.
real
and,
affinity.
we'd like to
A
just
deep
talk about
connection.
ideas together
Yeah.
and like kind of pick each other's brains in that way. So I think that's why it works. And we've been writing together since we were 9 years old, so it's just kind of a familiar thing for us.
Yeah.
And we always like to outline in advance so that we always know what's coming next in the story, and we never really hit that roadblock.
I just find it fascinating because the only other writers or creators I know about that are the Fan brothers who do the picture books, and it just blows my mind. Are there any other questions from the audience? Yeah, of course, yes.
Can people tell the difference in your voices when they're talking to you on the telephone? And do you finish each other's sentences?
We'll actually talk to our grandma on the phone, and then I'll have a whole conversation with her, and then she'll say, okay, now put Sasha on the phone. So yeah, I think our voices are very similar.
Any questions about the writing?
No questions, just
Do you
compliments.
finish each other's sentences?
I think sometimes.
Okay, enough.
Not the typical.
Yeah.
We're not identical twins, but sometimes people confuse us for.
Well, I also mean in your writing. I'm sorry, like the squiggly lines.
Yeah, yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah.
Do you finish ideas for each other like Lennon and McCartney?
Well, I feel because we have these kind of sessions together where we really think about all of our ideas together, we just kind of like maybe one of us will mention an idea and then the other one will get an idea because of that. So we kind of just bounce off of each other like that.
And do you have more books coming? Is it something that you can talk about?
Yep, so we do have the sequel to Spirit Service, that'll be next year.
Oh.
And we just finished the major edits on that one, so it's pretty much complete. And then we have another book coming out next month. So that one is a YA book called A Riddle of Thorns. And we kind of pitch it as like a dark academia twist on the Inheritance Games meets Divine Rivals.
Could be good.
So that one's also got like a bunch of genre blending. It's historical, mystery, and fantasy, sort of all in one book.
It's gonna be good.
Any other audience
Gonna be
questions?
good. I've already pre-ordered.
I think that's about it. Unless you wanted to add a little about writing and inspiration, anything to help with people who are wanting to be a writer but need a little bit of inspiration and advice?
I mean, this doesn't matter. Oh, there you go. I mean, if you want to be a better writer, I mean, the best advice you can get is to just write all the time and read all the time. You know, the more you read, the better you get at writing. And if you want to learn how to write in certain genres and forms, that's the books you should be reading. You know, and before I started writing this series, I read Narnia all the way over again, and that really helped me figure out how to structure and how to approach writing fantasy. It wasn't something I'd ever done before. And so when I write a picture book, for example, we were talking about this earlier, I probably read about 25, 30 picture books just to see like what's working, what, you know, in terms of rhythm, flow, repetition, some really important elements of picture book writing. So the more you write, the better you'll get, and the more you read, the better you get as well. So I mean, for young people as well, like the best thing you can do to write better is to write all the time and read all the time.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most simplest, but best advice you can get as a writer, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes so hard to do.
I mean, it's hard to do anything if you don't, you know, you got to put the time
Not
in.
in chair.
Yeah.
Stephen King called it that.
Yeah.
Any advice from you ladies?
Yeah, I think we basically did the same thing growing up. We would actually spend our summers writing. A lot of the times when our friends were like, hey, do you want to come hang out? We'd be like, okay, we're working on our book.
Like the Bronte sisters.
So I feel like a lot of the time we love writing so much that, you know, if you really enjoy it, then you're going to want to put some time and effort to it.
Yeah.
So, last chance for questions? Yeah.
I read Little Shoes last week to my students in North July, and they had a lot of questions about the illustrations because they tell extra parts of the story.
And I'm the host for the afternoon. This is last session, and it's called Discovering Our World. And this will feature the authors David A. Robertson and Sasha and Serena Nanua. Did I get that right? Okay. That's what I can do. So first, we're going to hear from David A. Robertson. He is the author of numerous books for young readers, including Governor General Literary Award winners On the Trapline and When We Were Alone. The Baron Brown's Book 1 of the Mesua Saga series was a Kirkus NBR and Quill and Choir Best Middle Grade Book of 2020. David is a member of Norway House Cree Nation and currently lives in Winnipeg, Canada. And he's going to talk about his book, The World's End. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. How's everybody?
Good.
Good. Oh, it's good to see you. It's good to be here. It's a beautiful day. I thought what I would do is just kind of, if you don't know this series yet, who's actually read any of the books yet of the series? One person. Okay. So I'm gonna introduce the series to you, tell you a little bit of what it's about, because The World's End is actually also the end of the series. So if you haven't read any of it, I'm not going to give you any spoilers. I'll try not to, but I'll tell you some of the stuff that went into writing it, and then I'll do a bit of reading from it, and then we'll do some questions if you have any questions. This series started in 2020. It actually came out, the first book called The Barren Grounds, which is a pretty well-known book, I think, but if not, that's okay too. It was right at the height of the pandemic. It came out in 2020 in the fall, and it was a book that I kind of envisioned as a series, or as a trilogy initially, and it was based on a few things. It was based on traditional stories, and then the whole series has been a series that is based on in honor of traditional storytelling. So my background is Cree, and we have a lot of traditional storytelling in my background, my culture. We have a lot of star stories and sky stories. So when you would look up at the sky and see different constellations and see maybe the Big Dipper, we would see an animal. And so the first book is actually based on a constellation called the Fisher Stars, or Pochegochakosak. And the Fisher Stars constellation is one of several that I used and incorporated into the creation of this series. And what I love about traditional storytelling is that not only is it very entertaining, it's very engaging, but it also has messaging. Every story has a message or a theme. The first book, The Fisher Stars Constellation Story, is actually a really forward-thinking story that it looks at environmental protection, like climate change, how we take better care of the land. And so that was very important for me. So every single book in this series is actually adapted from a traditional story of the sky or the stars. But every single book as well has a meaning that is relevant to contemporary society. So The Barren Grounds is a book that deals with foster care as well. And I wanted to talk a lot about foster care. But at the heart of it is also a Narnia-inspired story. So a lot of people call this like an indigenous Narnia.
Oh.
And that's a fair comparison. It was definitely how I pitched the book. And it's about, the whole series is about these two kids, Morgan and Eli, who are in foster care. And they eventually find a portal into another world that they open through artwork. And so when they open this portal, they find this world called Aski, which is Cree for Earth. And these animal beings that live in the North Country, in this other world, these animal beings are walking, talking animals, and they live in a village called Misawa. And every time Morgan and Eli go into this other world, they find themselves in adventures to try and save the village or save the world. And as they do that, they become more connected to their culture, more connected to their language, and more connected with traditional ways of living. And so I feel like it's been an exciting series. Every book has a different vibe to it too. So the second book is very much like inspired by time travel. Like Back to the Future was a very big inspiration for the second book called The Great Bear. The third book is called The Stone Child, which was very much inspired by like Tim Burton kind of stories, because it's a very creepy, like Northern Woods, like kind of scary story. Also, if you're old enough to know what Tremors is with Kevin Costner, very inspired by Tremors. And then the last three books are actually very much based on the history of the Beothuk people in Eastern Canada. And so I try to use the whole idea of colonialism and settler encroachment on the land to adapt that into children's literature and to find a way to tell that in a way that was engaging for kids, but also teach them things about the history of this country. And so the sixth book is the big finale. A lot of it is action-packed, but also Eli, who's one of the main characters, finding a way to save the whole world forever from the threat of humans coming onto the land and trying to mine it for resources. So what I thought I would do, within the traditional story, there's also little traditional stories. We have this trickster spirit in Cree culture called Wissikajak. Some of you may know Wissikajak as a character named Whiskey Jack. And so Wissikajak has a lot of creation stories, a lot of different stories that involve him eating, or involve him getting hurt in some funny way. And so I wanted to adapt that as well into this book. So I'm going to read you like a part of this book, which really has no bearing on the plot at all. Actually, maybe what I'll do is I'll just tell you the story itself instead of reading it to you, because it's a story that's been told for a long time. I learned it from my father. So Cree people, which I have one of them, we have a problem with our bodies in that we have no bums. And so there's a story about how Cree people lost their bums, and how Wissikajak, it's about Wissikajak. So he loves them when other people get him his food, but sometimes when they don't, he has to go and find his own. And so one day he was hunting in the forest, he had a bow and arrow with him, and he was stalking a bunch of animals, and eventually found this little rabbit in the field. And he thought, that was a perfect little lunch for me. So he took aim with his bow and arrow, and he just had that rabbit in his sights. And just as he was about to let go of that arrow and get his lunch, his bum farted on him. and it scared off the rabbit, and the arrow flew harmlessly into the air. The rabbit runs away. He gets so annoyed. He's like, "Don't you do that again." He's talking to his bum. He goes further and further into the woods, and he finds a deer. And he sees the deer. It's just sitting there grazing in the meadow. And he takes aim again with his bow and arrow. And he's about to shoot. And just before he's about to shoot, his bum farts for a second time. And the deer runs off. This is a true story, by the way. And the deer runs off into the forest. And the arrow flies harmlessly through the forest. And he's like, I've had enough. You do that one more time, you're in big trouble, he tells his bum. So he goes again, he finds this big moose. And he's like, this will feed me for weeks. So he takes his bow and arrow, he hides behind a tree. He's aiming at the moose, and he's just about to hit the moose. He lets go of the arrow, and just as he's letting go, his bum farts for a third time. And the moose goes running, the arrow goes flying, and the moose is safe, and he said, I've had enough, that is it, I warned you. And so he gathers all these rocks up, he builds this great bonfire in this opening clearing in the forest. And when the rocks get white hot, he turns around, he sits down on one of the rocks, right on his bum. And he sits down on this rock until the bum starts to just sizzle, and until he can't stand the pain anymore. And he gets up and he runs off all the way down into the forest, down the path on the riverbank, and puts his bum into the water. And he goes, and his bum gets cooled off. And he's like, okay, now I'm going to go try and find some food. And he walks up the pathway back up to the forest. And as he's walking back up, he finds all these little pieces of jerky. And he doesn't know where this is coming from. He's like, this is like a gift from Creator probably. And he picks up one of these pieces of jerky and eats it. He's like, this is delicious. It's just like my cook-up used to make me. Cook-up means my grandmother in Cree. Starts eating this jerky all the way up like a trail of breadcrumbs, eating the jerky all the way up. By the time he gets to the forest, he's totally full of all this jerky that he's eaten. And then when he gets there, the rabbit and the deer and the moose are all laughing at him. He's like, what are you laughing at? He said, oh, silly Wissikajak, you just ate your own bum. And that is why Cree people have no Bum. A real personal story about Mr. K-Jack and how he lost his bum that day. And that is actually in the book, and is actually a reflection of how amazing the book is, to be honest. That's the traditional story for you.
Okay, any other stories you would like to share? Not
No,
toxic positivity, but it's not good to, because I do it. I mean, I could spend hours reading the news, and I could sat on my couch, and I haven't moved in 2 hours. And A, my body is falling apart, and B, I'm miserable, and I hate the world. And it's not a good headspace to be in. It's not hopeful. So it's good to have a counter.
Yes, I loved reading about how like the different things that bring hope to people, and so some of the researchers found that like having a plan and a path to a goal was really built hope for some people. So they said, I want to publish a book, and they created a path to reach that, and that was really good for other people. And then there are people like me, and maybe you guys too, maybe all of us here, who find that things like listening to music, dancing, being in nature, that actually really fills the well for us and makes us hopeful as well. So it's not just about like reaching a goal, but just like finding those things that make us feel hopeful, and being in connection with others, community,
Connection,
huge.
like real connection.
Exactly.
And also hope.
Came out earlier this year called 52 Ways to Reconcile, which is I think a really important book. It's just a guide for how you can start out. It's sometimes very intimidating. I had a book about mental health coming out in January. It came out in January called All Little Monsters. That's a memoir. And then I had a picture book that came out about a month and a half ago or so, 2 months ago, called Little Shoes, and that's about the unmarked graves and how to talk about that with children through this story called Little Shoes. So those are the 4 books, and of course World's End came out as well this year. So yeah.
Fantastic. So any other questions? Oh, time's up. Sorry.
All right, timing.
Let's stay here because there might be more questions later.